Death Claims, a Dave Brandstetter mystery. Book 2. Author, Joseph Hansen. Publisher, University of Wisconsin Press, Terrace Books. Narrator, Eric Ost. Chapter 14. The street was a curved cement shelf, walled on one side by white buildings, Mediterranean style, and on the other by high curbs, topped with railings of thick iron pipe. The drop-off, the curbs, was 20 feet straight down to the red tile roofs of identical houses. Another curved shelf of street, and more red roofs below that among the sun-crested tops of reaching palms. Up here, there wasn't bare earth enough to yield much greenery. Plantings ran to clumps of spiky Spanish bayonet and stunted banana trees in the jogs of long white stairways. Sam Wald's front door had sometime been enameled black, but the coating had seamed and scaled off in places. Dave tried a black bell push. It didn't seem to work. There was a stingy black iron knocker. He rapped that at the end of the red tile, landing a fat, gray, striped cat woke from sleep in a patch of sun, stretched, sat, began to wash. She reminded Dave of Titania, his and Rod's old cat. A little window back of iron grillwork in the door opened. A bloodshot eye looked out. "David Brandstetter," he told the eye. "Death Claims Division, Medallion Life Insurance Company. It's about John Oates, the bookseller. He's dead?" The voice that answered was raspy and defeated, like a fan's who's cheered 14 innings for the team that lost. "I thought death was supposed to be the end." "Somebody wanted it to be," Dave said. "I'd like to know who. He was in touch with you. Maybe you can help me?" "I can't help myself." But a spring lock clicked. A chain rattled. The door opened. The man who opened it was short and pudgy. He wore a brindled gray track suit, made for someone no taller, but a lot thinner. Maybe a Sam Wald of 13 years ago? The shirt pulled up. The pants couldn't meet it. A bulge of lardy belly showed the suit needed washing. Stained deck shoes matched it. No socks, crusty ankles, 4 days of stubble, blacked Wald's jowls. He hadn't combed what was left of his hair. His lips were dry and cracked. He moistened them with a gray tongue and squinted gummy eyes against the slant of afternoon sun. He croaked. "All right, what the hell? Come in." He shrugged, flopped his hands, turned away. "Excuse how the place looks. Busy. No time. Can't afford a cleaning woman. Can't afford anything anymore. Can't pay the rent. That's who I thought you were. The landlord. Lived here 3 years. Son of a bitch won't trust me for a lousy month." Dave saw why when he shut the door and stepped down out of the hall. The room had space and a beautiful shape. Parquetry floor, Rococo Louis Quinn's chairs, and sofas. Good copies. No one cared anymore. No one had cared for quite a while. Dirty laundry strewed the Arbusan carpet. The petite point of footstools on delicate gilt and white tables stood open. Soup cans, beans, cans, contents, half-eaten, sprouting mold. Cloisonne and Meillasson were lost among crumpled potato chips. Soggy milk cartons, dried-out wedges of pizza, chewed, forgotten, on a white plaster mantel on Armalou clock, had stopped as if frightened by an ambush of empty vodka bottles. The smell was of decay. "I had 2 Oscar nominations." Wald picked his way through the wreckage, heading for a short curve of steps with icy iron rails. A dirty shirt hung off a fanale. He picked it up, looked at it as if he didn't know what it was, dropped it. "But do you think I can sell a script today? Can't even get an agent." Dave followed him up the stairs. In the room at the top, a handsome period desk held a big electric typewriter. Its motor pulsed softly. Rolled around its platine was a half-typed page. A sheet of typed pages lay next to the machine. There were also a fifth of supermarket vodka, a punctured can of Tree Sweet, orange juice, a thumb-smudged tumbler holding what was probably a mixture of the two. There were paperback books. Wald picked up one of these, his mouth puckered in disgust. So look, what I'm writing now. He held the book out. Dave took it, found his reading glasses. On the book's cover was a color photo of two girls in black lace bras and panties, kneeling on a couch. Taking the pants off, a sallow young man with a mustache. Porn. Cheap porn. It's not even a living, but I'm working my way up. They paid me $8.50 for the first one. I'm on my fourth. That'll get me an even $1,000. Just one trouble. They don't go any higher. They want product. To get it, they've got to keep you hungry. Nobody who wasn't starving would write this shit. He took back the book, dropped it on the desk, dropped himself into the carved gilded chair that faced the Olivetti. I had years when I made 100,000 a decade, when I never made less than 50. His hand went mechanically to the glass that held more than orange juice. While he sucked up half the mixture, he glowered at the words in the typewriter. He set the glass down, put his stubby fingers on the keys, and machine-gunned a sentence. Sickening, he said. You'd have to do one a week, Dave said. Can you do one a week? It's not a question of can, Wald said, and finished what was in the glass, and picked up the bottle with one hand, the tin of orange juice with the other, and poured the glass full again. Dave said, It might be easier without the booze. Without the booze, it would be impossible. Wald looked past Dave. What do you want? A woman who was very thin stood in an archway up 2 steps. Her soiled lavender wrapper didn't cover her breasts well. They were full, rounded like fine fruit on a dying tree. Her skin was corpse white, almost luminous. Her eyes were very large and took color from the dye of the wrapper. The only makeup she wore was liner around those eyes. She clutched under her arm a little stringy-haired, taffy-colored dog. He wants to go out. Her voice was deep, the dictation stagey. It made the speech sound like a quote from Antigone, one of the more tragic lines. Dave guessed he'd seen her in a film, or maybe more than one. She'd had more weight then, but the bones were what made her beautiful, and the bones were even more in evidence now. Her hair was cropped. There would be wigs someplace down the hall. Behind her, if she wore one for a minute, he'd be able to put a name to her, a moderately famous name, he thought. I can't take him, the ravished voice said. I'm not dressed. Get dressed, Wald said. I'm busy. Take him out, she screamed, and threw the little dog at him. It hit the floor, skidding with a terrified scrabble of claws. It came against the wall with a yelp and cringed, their shivering eyes sparks of fear behind a streaky straggle of hair. Dave looked back at the archway. The woman had gone back to her amphetamines, no doubt. Wald hadn't moved. He sat staring at the words in the typewriter again. Is there a leash? Dave went to the little dog, knelt, reached out a slow hand. Wald sounded dazed. What? The chair legs scraped the floor. He got to his feet with a sour sigh. Yeah, there's a leash. But you don't have to take him. Why the hell should you have to take him? You're busy, Dave said. The dog shrank back into a corner, whimpering. He touched its head, small, delicate as a Severus teacup. He gently scratched the silky ears. The dog quivered, but it didn't snap. It let him pick it up. Where do I find the leash? I live in a goddamn nightmare, Wald said. He went past Dave fast and down the stairs. Dave followed, carrying the dog. He watched Wald paw among unopened bills and letters, magazines, still in their mailing wrappers, on a narrow gilt table next to the steps up into the hall. He found a length of braided leather. While the small body wriggled with anxiety, Dave clipped the leash to the collar. He set the dog down and pulled open the door. It tugged him out, claws scrabbling again, with eagerness this time. Dave could understand its wanting out. What he couldn't understand was that after it had relieved itself in the ivy geranium that margined the steps halfway down to the street, it turned and pulled hard on the leather to get back to the house. It pawed the cracked black door frantically to get in. When he let it in, bent, and snapped off the leash, it streaked across the littered room and up the short stairs. It was as crazy as the other inhabitants. Wald was rattling the Olivetti when Dave got back to him. He'd finished the page. He yanked it out of the machine and laid it on top of the others. He looked at Dave. "Thanks," he said. "I hate going out there looking like this in daylight." It reminded Dave of John Oates swimming at night. What did Oates want when he telephoned you? Wald snorted a kind of laugh. "Money. Nobody calls me anymore except for money. Why do people always want what you haven't got?" Obviously he didn't know. Elegant bookcases lined with wall scroll pediments, pierced fretwork, doors, and beyond the fretwork solid shelf after shelf of rich leather bindings that glowed with costliness and care. Decades of it. Dave put on the reading glasses and peered. Halliman's History of England. 2 stout, deep green volumes, hand-tooled, hand-gilded, in flawless tracery. Essays of Aaliyah in cinnamon brown, pebbled leather, with a rose motif and gilt between the cords. Simon's Benvenuto Cellini in glossy black with austere gilt rulings. Dave hunkered down for a look at the lower shelves that were meant to accommodate taller books. "He knew," Wald said. "I bought a lot of books from him. Then I had to stop a couple years ago." "So you didn't go?" Dave asked. "What for? It's all to hell and gone from here." Dave stood up, took off the glasses, pushed them into their pocket, faced Walt. "You're lying," he said. "You went. Maybe not that time, but later. He telephoned you again, and that time you went." Walt stared. "Who told you?" "Nobody was there." Dave pointed. "That gap in the shelf tells me. Big enough for 3 folio volumes. Cook's Voyages, First Voyage, first edition in tree calf. You left them on the coffee table in John Oates' house at Arena Blanca on the night somebody killed him." "Killed?" Walt half stood up, but his legs weren't going to hold him, and he knew it. He sank back. "Look," he said, and his voice was hoarse and shaky. "I went. Yeah, he did call me again, and, well, hell, I felt sorry for him. No, I didn't have much, but at least I had my health. Poor bastard." Dave shook his head. "No, I can't buy it. Wald, you're in financial trouble, but you haven't moved a single book of these shelves except those 3. If you sold this collection, you could live off the proceeds for a long time, but you don't sell. You'd rather write stuff you despise than part with the books." "I'd sell her first." Walt jerked his scruffy head toward the archway. "Only nobody'd buy." "So why did you take those books to John Oates? I don't know the quote from book prices current, but isn't it high?" "Not very. 40, 50 pounds. Dave narrowed his eyes. $130? "You're quick with figures," Walt said. He was asking more than that. Dave said, "A lot more, and he didn't need books. He had books. He needed cash for morphine. That's a desperate kind of need. Wald, why didn't you sell the books and take him the money? In fact, why did you bother with him at all?" "I told you I felt sorry for him." "Sorrier than for yourself? You don't convince me." "I don't have to convince you," Wald said. "Get out. Give me an innocent reason you were there the night somebody knocked John Oates over the head and dragged him into the surf to drown, and I'll get out." "No, don't try. Let me tell you, John Oates had a remarkable memory. He never forgot anything. He knew about anybody. Obviously, most of what he knew was harmless, but not all. He knew something that could harm you." "Now," Walt's laugh was bleak, "you're kidding." "Oh, things could be worse. You could be in jail." Walt turned in the chair to reach for his orange juice mixture. He was clumsy about it. He almost knocked the glass over. Not quite. He got it shakily to his mouth. He drank too fast, choked, had a coughing fit. When it ended and he was wiping his face with his hand, Dave told him, "I'm only guessing, but I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. You see, logically, knowing you were broke, you'd be the last person Oates would ask for help. But you weren't the last. For some reason, you were an early choice. The reason had to be you couldn't get out of helping. I suppose he thought you'd sell some of your library. You weren't scared enough. You tried to fob him off with Cook's Voyages, not even a very expensive item. Nowhere near the $500 he needed, plus which he was in no position to travel around peddling books. He got angry and threatened you with whatever he had on you, and you hit him. What you did after that was stupid. A man wouldn't go swimming in a rainstorm. Now wait, Walt said. Just wait, goddammit. I didn't do it. I didn't even know he was dead till you told me. Yes, he had something on me. I guess it adds up to grand theft. See, after I went broke, I kept getting books, not only from Oates and Norwood, from all the good shops, charging them. Then, when I couldn't pay the bills, they cut off my credit. And you don't know what that is. Tears blurred his eyes, oozed down through the stubble. I love books. Not books. These, for God's sake, are books. He grabbed up the paperbacks and slammed them on the floor. I mean, fine books. Beautiful books. I don't dream about women. Brandstetter, I dream about bindings. I couldn't quit. I went right on. Only I just didn't stop off at the cash register. And one day John Oates got you, Dave said. Walt shut his eyes, tightened his mouth, nodded. Opened his eyes, sighed. He was decent about it. Then one day he stopped here. Said he didn't get to Hollywood often, thought he'd look in. I guess, knowing I was hard up, he thought I might want to sell. But all he asked was to see the books. Naturally, it was our common interest, right? So he saw Cook's Voyages. He'd heard it was stolen from Stagg's. I didn't know then he'd recognized it. Didn't know till he told me on the telephone last week. I said I wouldn't go, but I knew I had to. I should have sold something. I couldn't. I got drunk and I got mad. I picked up the Cook's. He'd probably spotted other stolen titles too. There are others, much more valuable, but Cook's Voyages was all he mentioned. I figured to tell him to take it and do what he wanted with it. If necessary, I'd cry, believe me. These days it wouldn't be acting. But he wasn't there. I got lost trying to find the place. It's off the map. And I was loaded. I didn't get there till long after dark. There were lights inside, but nobody came. When I rang the bell, I couldn't stand out in the rain. Not with those books. The door was unlocked. I went inside, hollered, looked through the place. He wasn't anywhere, okay? That suited me fine. I left the books and cleared off. If I'd killed him, would I have left the books? Dave shrugged. That would depend on how much killing a man upsets you. You're a hard-nosed son of a bitch, aren't you? Well, listen, I didn't kill him, but maybe I wasn't the only one he was putting the arm on, and maybe they had more to lose. Somebody was there just before me. Muddy footprints? Dave asked. Better than that. While I was driving down the road through the hills to the cove, a car passed me coming up at a curve, so my headlights caught the driver's full in the face. Even in the rain, I recognized him. Another old Oates and Norwood customer. I didn't know him personally, but we've spoken in the shop. Bald guy, professor, someplace authority on Thomas Wolfe. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.